Well, lastly, let's talk about the differences between a food chain and a food web. Wow, this is very interesting, and you'd find that these questions are there in the paper. I'm going to show you something. Wow, so when you talk of a food chain, yeah, when you talk of a food chain actually contains only one sequence. Very, very important. One sequence. Like I drew it, you'd find that it is only like this. Not so. This is how it actually looks. Yeah, and then we're having a producer, we're having a primary consumer, tertiary. I mean, yeah, we're having a primary consumer, secondary consumer, and whatever. Only with only one line. That is what it means with only one sequence of feeding relationship. Wow, a food chain by definition, in fact, we are differentiating these by definitions. A food chain actually contains only one sequence of feeding relationships. Whereas a food web is a sequence, I mean, is an interlinked is an interlinked sequences sequences of feeding relationships. Hope you understand that. So you're having something like this, you're having something like this, like that, and then even here, yeah, different sequences. We can use this sequence. If you're having cabbage here, you can use this sequence, you can use this sequence, you can use this sequence. You would find that there are a lot of sequences. That's the first key difference between a food chain and a food web. Hope you understand that, and that is very, very simple. Wow, let's talk about now the second difference. Let's talk about the second difference. They are just about three. Yeah, they are just three differences. Okay, the second difference is that you'd find that most of the food chains actually, in fact, food chains food chains contain fewer organisms than food webs. Food webs, yeah. So in short, you're going to find that food webs actually contain a lot of organisms than food chains. And the reason is simple. We said to say a food web is an interlinked of feeding relationships, or a group of interlinked food chains. Meaning, in one food chain, I mean, there are a lot of food chains, and that is actually what is causing this food web to have a lot of organisms. But when talk of food chains, it's just a sequence, just one sequence. That is why we are having fewer organisms. I don't even understand that. So that is a basic key. That is second basic key difference. What is the last difference? The last difference between a food chain and a food web is that each organism actually occupies only one trophic level. Occupies only one trophic level. So when talking of a food chain, when talking of food chain, we find that we are just having one producer, and then we are having one primary consumer, and then we are having one secondary consumer. But when talking of a food web, just as I was drawing, when talking of a food web, you are going to find that let me just do this so to understand very well. Let me just do this. We are having things like cabbage. We are having cabbage. I'm using cabbage because that is the example we are using. Okay. And then we are having man. So, like in our previous example, we found that this man is actually on a trophic level of a primary consumer. But if we use this route where we are the rabbit here, this man is again on a trophic level of a secondary consumer. If you use this one whereby we come to rabbit and then we come to man, this man is having more than one trophic level. If you use this route, this man is having a trophic level of of a primary consumer. If you use this route, this man is having a trophic level of of a secondary consumer. So that is what it means. But whereas in a food chain, when you talk of a food chain, each organism only occupies one trophic level, and that is the reason. The main reason is that this one is a linear sequence. It is not complicated like a food web. I hope you understand that. So these are three powerful key differences between a food web and a food chain. And mostly you're going to find that they give maybe 6 marks, yeah, because they know that there are basically 3 differences. I hope you've enjoyed the topic. Yeah, these are some of the key things which you need to revise. Remember, I was saying to say I'll concentrate on key things. Yeah, the other things which have remained are like carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle. Yeah, it's rare to bring those things, but for the sake of going through, please make sure you go through and then